Hi guys, I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I get a lot of messages, you guys asking when am I going to bring Angie back, and she's here again in the flesh. Karibu sana Angie.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure to have you on my channel.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always a joy to be here.
Alrighty, so today we are continuing the discussion for some of the commonly asked questions, some of the questions that you guys ask us a lot in our inboxes. And the one, I want us to start off with is so many people ask, I find myself in this situation whereby I want to transition. So I want to recareer from marketing to HR, for example. So I went to school. I've done a degree in marketing. I have a certification in CIM. But now I have a change of heart and I want to recareer to HR. Where do I start?
Wow. Okay. Well, first and foremost, it's okay to recareer. I tell people on average now people have about 5 different careers in their lifetime. So it's okay. You're not crazy. You're not having midlife crisis necessarily, but it's completely fine. I think the first thing is for you to figure out what exactly it is about this new space you want to sort of get. Sometimes from the outside, it looks like maybe my work is so hectic. It's marketing. Maybe you're always on the go, go, go. And you look at the HR professional and they just look like they're just chilling, they're just resting. Life just seems easy. People are coming to them. They're not going out to people. Just being able to identify what exactly about this new career do I actually want or do I like? Because sometimes it's something external, something as superficial as that, for example. And then maybe it could even be an issue where maybe in your marketing, you still need to be in marketing, but you need different kinds of marketing roles. Maybe there are aspects of your marketing job that you don't quite like, and you can sort of like shift that within marketing itself, because also moving careers is a very huge move. So I think that the first thing is to identify what exactly about, let's say HR, for example, do I like or am I attracted to? And then being able to figure out, okay, so it's actually that I'm actually attracted to maybe working with people, serving people, then that makes sense. It's like, okay, fine, I can't do that necessarily in marketing. Then now I'm thinking about, okay, I want to go into HR. What does it look like to be in HR? Speak to people in HR, even in your own organization. Find out from the HR person there or HR people there, like what is it that they do on a day-to-day basis. Again, trying to familiarize yourself with the HR space, figuring out what that looks like. Are you able to shadow anyone? Even before we're talking about getting degrees, certification, are you able to shadow anyone, even if it's somebody in the organization or somebody externally? Are you able to sit with them and find out, like let me see what a day in your life looks like, or a week? Can you do it after hours? Can you do it, alongside the work that you're already doing? And then if you start to see, okay, I'm really enjoying this. Look at what does it require. Like if I was to move from marketing to HR, what would that look like realistically? You don't necessarily have to go and become an HR intern or assistant. You could possibly even enter at the same level or maybe slightly lower than where you are in the marketing department. But it's like, okay, what would it look like for me to now be somebody who can be hired as an HR professional? Maybe I need a certification in HR, so is it like a diploma? Do I need to get a CHRP certification? Whatever that looks like, how quickly can I start doing those things? You can do it online, or you can completely quit if you have savings and you have, you're just really fed up with what you're doing, and then start thinking about that transitioning, and then start looking at, okay, what are some of the strengths or skills that are required in HR that I already have in marketing? Because for most people, when they're thinking about recareering, they're thinking, but I have nothing, I have completely nothing, no expertise in. But let's talk about like HR, for example. It's all about people. In marketing, usually, especially if it's an outward facing role, you're talking to people. So how can you look at the experiences and expertise you've developed until this point, and see how those can lend themselves. What skills do you have that are transferable to the new space that you're trying to get into? So that you're also looking at, okay, this is what is needed in HR. How many of those skills that are needed do I already have? Because maybe it's more that you are serving very many different stakeholders or clients outside, but with HR, it's a specific group of people that you're going to be serving in an organization. How have the experiences you've developed over the years in marketing given you a unique perspective? Because sometimes it's not even a disadvantage that your background is not HR, it's non-HR, because maybe you see things differently than traditional trained HR professionals. There are things you can bring, things that you can be able to understand and see that are very different to what could be seen in, by traditionally trained HR professional. So those are some of the things you can start thinking about. And then things like informational interviews. Now, this is beyond just job shadowing. Informational interviews. So you think about, I want to go into HR. Eventually, what do you want to eventually attain to? What position? Can you sit down with people who can be able to give you tips and strategies to be able to transition effectively? Asking them, okay, so instead of you going the entire route of let me go and get a degree in HR, maybe you can speak to an HR specialist at the place where you want to eventually get to, and they tell you, actually, right now, the most important thing is HR analytics. So instead of you studying everything in HR, how about you start with analytics? And then so it helps you to be able to position yourself not just to enter at the same level as everyone else, but to enter at a strategic level. So that's some of the things that I can think of, I guess, off the top of my head right now. I don't know what you would add to that.
Right. So it's I think it's usually a very uncomfortable situation to be in, where you're doing one thing but then your heart is in a totally different a different space. And more so, we are finding more and more people doing degrees that are quote unquote marketable, but they're not in line with their strengths, their skills, and their passion. So midway, they get themselves in this situation whereby, I don't like what I'm doing and I want to change. And what I've seen most people doing, so you have this experience degree in marketing, and now you're actively applying for HR with a marketing CV, which, it's not going to work. Like, you need to do exactly what it is you're saying. And for me, the big things are, first of all, as you're saying, you need to get clear that when you're recareering to the direction in which, it needs to be aligned with your strengths, your skills, and your passions. And you are sure, this is exactly what I need, this is exactly what I need to do, because it's going to be a shame if you recareer and then again, it's not
what it seemed like.
Yeah, or it's not what you wanted, and then now it's, you find yourself in a mess. So get clear, get qualified, and get started. So getting qualified now in terms of, like, of course you need to get the certifications, but then after you've done everything that you're saying. So because you see, it's a lot of work going for those like getting the information, getting the research, and most people want to skip the work and just now get this HR job,
exactly,
which is not going to work.
Yeah.
So I like what you're saying, that you'd rather spend a lot of time and research making sure that this is exactly what I need to do. And then once you have, then get qualified. And then now, get started in terms of, should you be shadowing someone? Should you be starting to do like a degree? Can you, are you keeping yourself abreast with what is happening in that area,
industry,
and industry, because of course, like, things are changing. So it's of course it's a difficult and it's an uncomfortable place to be, but then there are all these things that you can start doing. And then now, how do you align your documents? So like in terms of now your CV, your LinkedIn profile, the CV you can change, but you see how the LinkedIn profile, it's only one thing.
And it's all together.
And
people are seeing in that way. I was going to add one other thing in terms of aligning I guess it could also speak to aligning your CV, but sometimes it might take a while, even as you're careering, to be able to get people to like bet on you, because it's like, okay, you've been in marketing or you've been a chef all these years, now you want to come and do HR or whatever else it is. Volunteering is a very, very, very good way to build experience, and it doesn't even have to be in the biggest organizations. It can literally be, okay, I want to start doing HR. Okay, my mom has 6 employees in her house. Let's see how we can develop systems for her to be able to have contracts for her employees, to be able to just basic things. Just find any opportunity to practice this new thing that you want to do, because then that's something you can show your employer, potential employer, and even something you can put in your CV, for example. And it can be for a family business, it can be for a neighborhood something, it can be for an NGO that can't afford maybe a trained HR professional, but you can be there offering your services and things like that. And they can be things that you maybe do on the weekend or you do in your extra time that you have. But I think in terms of what we talked about CV, that you can sort of change your marketing CV to be more like now an HR CV.
HR, yeah.
So you start with the HR related things, the HR qualifications, but don't completely also leave out all the other experience. Have you met people like that?
Yes.
Who now you remove for the last 5 years, we don't know what you've been doing. Because now you're denying your whole past. And now just wanting to seem like an HR professional. But that's it's not beneficial to you.
Right.
I think on LinkedIn, it helps with your headline, whatever it is. You don't necessarily have to say marketing professional turned HR. Preferably, please don't do that. But you can put you can put what your strengths are in HR, or like what you see your vision as within the HR space. I think it's also in terms of like networking can also come there. But even in terms of the roles that you have done, instead of them being, how let's say you have marketing director or marketing officer or whatever, and then these are the accomplishments that you have, you can change even the language around those responsibilities and achievements into language that seems relatable to HR as well, which could also be strengths. You can do LinkedIn online courses on HR and HR related subjects or interest areas, which sort of align you. Even the jobs that will be suggested, the alignment of what kind of roles you're suited for, even for recruiters, will also shift once you start having those on your profile.
Right.
Yeah.
But so what we are saying is you cannot come and tell me you're passionate about HR, and when I look at your CV, there's nothing HR.
Yeah.
So you cannot say that you're trying to recareer and you're not volunteering, you're not trying to look for an internship, you're not doing an online course. Exactly. There's nothing that shows the passion. Then that means you're probably not even so passionate about this HR.
Exactly.
Because if you are indeed passionate about HR, then I should see some form of action on your CV, on your LinkedIn or something that, that convinces me that indeed you have a background in marketing, but now you're shifting to, to HR and you're doing X, Y, and Z to make that change. But it's going to be important that you tailor your your CV now, because then you cannot use that previous marketing CV to apply for any HR roles. If I come to a LinkedIn profile and it reads all marketing, then it's going to be impossible to to apply for any HR roles, which I think is the mistake that most people make. So in your mind, you want to recareer, but then your documents and they don't show that, and you're also not doing anything to recareer. So when you go for an interview and say you're passionate about this thing, then we are like, okay,
where's the evidence?
Exactly. It's not demonstrable.
And sometimes people, especially when you're moving into an area of your passion, some people get offended when people can't see it. Like, so if you come and tell me now I want to move into interior decor, and then you ask me, can I just design your house? Can I do your house? And I'm like,
no, you can't.
I'm like, I support you as a person, but I've never seen any evidence of you doing it. And then now you feel offended because I'm not being supportive. But you see, it's important enough to me that I need you must show. It's not, it's not volunteer work. And even volunteer work, I can't volunteer my space for you to come and quote unquote ruin it. I need to be able to see that you can actually do what you're saying that you can do. So even when you go in with your marketing and you say, oh, now I want to be in HR, and you start feeling offended that people are not giving you an opportunity, it's really less about the people not seeing your vision or your new path that you want to go to. It's more about you haven't demonstrated to them enough that you can do this thing. Because remember, a business, whether it's a for-profit or non-profit organization, they care about this area that they're going to entrust to you. There are clients who are going to see there's actual implications for you messing up this thing. So they can't just give it to everyone who comes saying that, oh, I'm really passionate about this, I'm passionate about this. You have to actually demonstrate that beyond passion, this is evidence that I can actually do. This is evidence that I want to grow in it. This is what I have done in the past. There's some sort of portfolio, whether it's your volunteering, whether it's a certification you've gotten, there has to be something that shows you're taking this thing seriously, because it's going to be serious to our organization. And if you mess it up, it's going to mess up our organization.
Right. And I know there's this entitlement mentality. So you feel because we are friends or we are family, I have to give you an opportunity, but then there's nothing demonstrable. So now, you hear all these things, someone does not support me. You turn into a motivational speaker. They don't support me.
Directed to certain
haters.
People. Yeah. No, the haters are just right around you.
Yeah. The day But then there are people who are passionate about one thing every week.
Exactly.
This week I'm so passionate about interior designing.
Yeah.
The next week I'm so passionate about this. The other,
Yeah.
so you see, like there's no consistency. There's
Exactly.
you're not demonstrating. So of course, like most people are not going to give you a chance. But if indeed you're really passionate about this direction in which you want to career, there's going to be evidence.
Yeah.
So if there's no evidence, you probably need to sit back and ask yourself, is it really, do you really want to career, or maybe you need to hold off and if it's the marketing, try and do it a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Again, I normally feel sometimes we don't allow ourselves to sit somewhere long enough to cook. You know how chicken,
That part.
you need to leave it in the oven.
Even
let
before
it
the oven,
brown,
we marinate it first
and let
for
it
some
sit.
time.
And let it sit.
Yeah.
Even overnight,
Yeah.
if it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that then it can marinate properly. Put it in the oven. Bila haraka.
Yeah.
Let it just stay and cook. But we want to remove things quickly, half cooked. Then we are confused and getting stomach problems just because we didn't allow like the food to cook long enough. So before you decide that I really want to career, give yourself enough time to stay in that place, because then sometimes it's probably just a season. Or maybe there's something that you need to learn. Like now, for example, HR, there's certain HR work that is so boring. The admin,
Mundane. Just
files, filing.
And for some people, it's different things. Like for me, I really dislike this whole thing about like this employment relations and
The law.
labor law. I mean, please. Like those are the things you leave to like the last part of like, is there anything else I could do with my day? Is there anything else I could look at?
Yeah.
And then in the end, you're like, okay, I'm going to do it. But it's one bit of the entire workload. Yeah.
And for me, like, no, it's things like the admin work and filing contracts. But you see, if I did not sit long enough when I was like photocopying the contracts and going through them and filing, doing NSSF, NHIF, and honestly, and PIN, and anyone can do that. Even someone from high school can do it.
Yeah.
But then if you don't allow yourself to sit there and just do, you won't realize there's something more interesting like recruitment or something.
You could have said, hey, this HR thing.
Hey, no.
No. Yeah.
So I think,
No, I really like that point. I like that point because I think what you mentioned about seasons, but and especially sometimes could be seasons, because sometimes you work in a firm where maybe you're in accounting or that space or audit, and then maybe every end of the month or every time there's audit once a year, it's just so hectic, But if maybe the first time you join the organization it's during audit season, you might be like, man, this is terrible. There's no work-life balance. But maybe it's just for the month. It's just 2 months out of the year, and there's something you need to learn. You need to learn resilience. You need to learn how to work in a team. You need to learn how to work under pressure. Sometimes it could be that it's not even that you hate maybe your job or you hate what you're doing. It could be just some aspects, like what we're talking about, just some aspects of it. And maybe that it's not even necessarily for you to re-career in terms of just move to a completely different industry. It's more that you need to even within HR, there are people who are recruitment specialists. That's all they do. Other people who do change management, other people do performance management. It's just, if you stay long enough, you'll discover, okay, this part I don't like, and so as I'm applying for the next job, I want to make sure that in my job description they will not be telling me to do an SSF because I hate it. I want to focus on recruitment, or I realize that really I just have no time for interviews. So what I want to be doing is team building, performance management, organizational behavior, and so I will look for opportunities. It's not to just drop the ball here. It's let me steward this opportunity that I have so that now I can be able to learn what I need to learn. And then now for my next role, I can apply for what better aligns with my gifts, my strengths, my interests, my passion. But then if you're just so quick, you're working here 2 weeks, I don't like here, here I don't like that. And I mean, nowadays, I'm sure you get those DMs I've signed a contract, it's now 3 weeks, the job doesn't look like what they told me, I'm thinking of leaving. 3 weeks. What 3 weeks? What have you learned in 3 weeks? The first 2 weeks are probably orientation and and that kind of thing. You've not learned enough. And sometimes, you can go to the ground and things are very different, but there's always something to learn. There is always something to learn.
Right. And I like what you're talking about. Like, you need to be a good steward with what you have now. Whatever work that you've been given, even if it's boring or it doesn't work, just do it well, because that is what is going to give you your next opportunity. Exactly. And then for some, I don't know if you've heard this quote. Sometimes, someone might say they're depressed, but really, if you give them $1 million, the depression goes. So the problem could be not even the work, maybe it's even the organization.
Yeah.
That, you're probably in a very toxic place that you even think whatever it is that you're doing is horrible. But if you are to be moved to a different organization, maybe that department is different and you meet different people and you'll end up loving the job more than. So there's so many things that, that you want to consider before you think, I want to change completely. People normally go through these phases, like what a year starts and they're like, I want new year, new job. You want to abandon everything that you did, and as you're saying, sometimes you want to even remove the whole of the marketing experience from your CV. But then the truth is, like, when you're recareering, you're not starting afresh. You're not starting from zero, you're starting from experience. It's just that now you want to like to move differently. But there are so many things that you want to take into consideration. If you can't, speak to someone. You can talk to a career coach. You can talk to your mentor. Also speak to a few other people. Don't just wake up and make a decision to like quit, and you've not thought the decision through. So recareering is challenging. It can be done. It's a bit challenging. There's so much that you need to do, but then indeed it's something that you can actually do. The other question is about employment gaps on someone's CV. And people have employment gaps for one reason or the other. Maybe you took a sabbatical. For some people, they took some time to raise their families. For some people, they went to study. The people who take a break, jokingly, maybe start a business. Then it's 5 years, maybe the business that shuts down, then they need to come back. Many job seekers struggle with that gap. How do I put it on my CV? What do I say when I go for an interview? Many stay-at-home moms also struggle with that gap. As we know, like many employers, they want to hire someone who has fresh experience. I don't want to hire someone and then I'm having to train them. So what advice would you give about, let's start with, how do you explain that employment gap during an interview?
Okay. I think the employment gaps are common, it's not something that just happens to just rarely. And they're common for many different reasons, as you said. I think when you go into an interview, the most important thing is for you to own your story. Like, there's an employment gap. This person who is interviewing you has your CV, so they can see there's an employment gap. Don't wait for them to ask you the question. My advice usually to candidates is you bring it up. So as you're talking about your journey, your career journey, or how you have worked, you bring it up. You be the one. It's the same way, like if there's a scandal, usually you see in PR firms or PR crises, usually the better outcomes come from the people who have been in that scandal. So like they want to come out and say the story, before they're being told, so you did what? No. You be the one to come out. And the same thing happens even in interviews. Anything that you're asked about, usually you're very defensive about. And then you're now trying to answer a question to see, like, how are they listening to what I'm saying? How are they seeing me? How are they viewing me? If you are the one who brings it up, talk about, okay, in 2017, I completed this, I worked for this company, and then I took 5 years out. In those 5 years, as you can see in my CV, it's not documented. In those 5 years, I was doing XYZ. I had my daughter or my son, and then I did this and this and the other. Because I was not in full-time employment, I spent some time getting these extra skills, or I started my own business, and this is what it sort of looked like, and then sort of like what it is you are doing. So you be the one to bring it up. So the questions they're going to ask you are going to be based on what you have presented to them, as opposed to them asking you, I can see a 5-year gap here, what were you doing in that time? And so you're trying to like feed that in. So in an interview, be the one to bring it up, which means that you have to have taken time to think about it. What people are usually concerned about when there are gaps in the CV is things like, so like if you've had, maybe it's 2022, the last time you worked was 2017, right? Is your skill set, your mindset, your value that you're offering 2017 value, So it is your responsibility to tell the employer, or to show the employer that you've been increasing in value. Even as a stay-at-home mom, there are things you've been doing, whether it is budgeting, whether it is doing online courses, maybe it's house management or whatever. But being able to identify, in those 5 years, have you increased in value? In those 5 years, do you understand what's still going on in the industry? Because because it's not, don't come and tell us in 2017, or now everybody's meeting physically, and now obviously in 2022 everything is remote, and there's hybrid sort of work models and stuff like that. So don't talk language from 2017. Talk about what have you been doing, how have you increased in value, whether that's from qualifications or experiences that you've had, and then what it is you see that now in 2022 that you can be able to contribute to, because then it proves that it's not just words you're saying, but you're actually keeping in step with what's happening in the industry. And that's a good place to start.
Yeah. And just to add, one of the things that you want to do immediately is, if you can get into, even if it's you're volunteering somewhere, if now there's a gap and now you want to try and get back into the job market, so that then there's something that you're saying you're doing currently, whether it's like you've gotten into a project, you're using your skills to do XYZ, you're volunteering somewhere, you're studying this, you're trying to see, with the skills that you currently have, are there any problems that you can start solving, and are you able to document that, so that then on the CV there's something from 2022 to present, there's something that you're doing, then that is that CV is more marketable than one that the last time you worked was 2017 and there's a glaring
gap,
5-year gap. But if you're able to get onto something, then now the focus is what you're doing now, because always the employer or the hiring manager wants to look at what you're currently doing now. And it is possible that maybe you left employment 5 years ago, but then you have studied about digital marketing. Now you're so good with social media. Sometimes even they'll forget the employment gap. But if honestly, the last time you worked was 5 years ago, then it becomes a little bit tricky for them, because they're like, okay, is your experience dated
5 years,
back, what have you been doing between 2017 and now? And then the other challenge I normally see is then, how you present that on your CV, because then there are people who now, they took the break, and then so their CVs are for 5 years ago. Things have changed between 2022, so between 2017 and today. We have now modern CVs, ATS CV. The LinkedIn profile is so pronounced in 2022 than it was like 5 years ago. And I find most people not maximizing on their tools. So your CV is old, your cover letter is old, you probably don't have a LinkedIn profile. Then it becomes very difficult for you to position yourself in employment. I don't know what experience you've had with that.
Before I answer your question, I think you ended at such a good place in terms of finding something to do currently. I think sometimes when you've been out of work for a while, many people that I interact with are usually just like, but I don't have a job, but like, what can you find to do? Start even, not saying that everybody is called to entrepreneurship, but surely there's something. A small business, a small charity, a small anything that you can start doing. Literally anything. It could literally be that you're walking all the kids in your estate to the gate. I don't know, something.
You started a play group.
Anything. Literally anything. It's better than just having these large gaps. And so if you worked here for 3 months, you skipped now the next year, you've worked there for 2 months somewhere. No. Please, you need to be able to demonstrate some consistency, and that can be at your own terms. Like nobody needs to know the detail of exactly what you're doing, but there has to be some effort that you've put in.
Right.
I think in terms of CVs, I think that's number one, a very, very good thing. But the other thing is that you can start with any skill improvement that you've had within your CV. So that if the last couple of things, the last job you had was in 2017, the thing that you can lead with in your CV is your education. And to go into detail. So let's say between 2017 and 2022, maybe you've done some courses on digital marketing. You have done something on cyber security. You've done something, just things related to that. Go into a bit more detail about, okay, I did this in 2018. This is the courses I covered. If there's a project that I did, put a bit more of information on that, because then it's like, okay, so we can start with understanding and appreciating the value that you have increased. But the second thing is, there's no way you can send me a 2017 CV in 2022 and expect that things are going to go well.
No.
First and foremost, in 2017, most people were sending out like 4 to 6 page CVs. Nobody's reading those right now. Nobody is reading 6-page CVs right now, please. So just get somebody to look at it. And then also, the language usually changes, even in industries. The things that people are looking for, the things that are like hot topics in even different industries are usually different, so maybe 5 years ago people were talking about, I don't know, we're talking about like online communication. Now we're talking about digital marketing, and those are the things which are being looked at. I mean, but like on LinkedIn, or even things like with your ATS systems, they're looking for those keywords. So if yours is just reading all the traditional sort of sense things, then you're not really advantaging yourself
Right.
in this right now.
Right.
And then even in your cover letter, that's where you can say something about your gap. Especially if it's glaring, it could be something that you specifically speak about in your cover letter, not in too much detail,
Yeah.
but explaining it, sort of like how you'd explain it in an interview, but in a more like summarized way.
Right. I like what you've said. Don't get into so much details about the gap.
Yeah.
So that then during the interview, the focus must not be on the gap. The focus needs to be what kind of skills have you gained during the gap that now positions you in 2022 to be the best candidate for this position? Because sometimes what candidates normally do is now we focus on the gap. Now we want to talk about motherhood.
Yeah.
Or we want to talk
Too
about
much.
yeah. We want to talk about, I took this gap because this, personal thing happened. And you see, the problem about going into the details about the personal thing is that you might start crying, or it's going to take you back to that emotional place. Now we are not doing an interview, we are looking for
Therapy.
tissue.
It's therapy session now. And sometimes recruiters, and I don't know if it's happened to you, sometimes recruiters feel like or find that some candidates can be very emotionally manipulative. So you want us to hire you because, you're the only breadwinner for your family. Could all be legitimate reasons, could all be. But this is not the place for you to now start
No,
telling
it's
us all
not.
the details about, as a mom, and then, like I really have to be the one. No, please.
We're not.
We're not doing you a favor here. We
Right.
are exchanging value for value.
Yeah.
So I like what you said about that. Let's not go into all the details with personal challenges and things.
Exactly. So you want to steer clear about any topic that is going to get you emotional, is going to get you to start crying, is going to get you into now this place, because your mind shifts completely.
Yeah.
Then now we are not focusing on your skill set or your value, we are focusing on like what happened. But if you're able to ensure that the everyone is concentrating about the value that you're bringing, the skills that you have gained, even your previous experience from 5 years ago, but then you are trying to skew it towards how is that skill set relevant in 2022. That's what is important. You need to form a connection between that skill set 5 years ago and today, because there's so much that has happened. A whole pandemic and whole elections happened. We are living in different times, a different era, and so when you go for an interview, you need to position yourself as someone who understands the world of 2022. It's very digital. Everything is online. There's so much happening in social media. You could even try and maximize on your experience in social media, because nowadays social media is so big. No one is advertising on newspapers and TVs anymore. Everything is so digital. So like, a course or doing something or being experienced in digital marketing is something that is so important. So that if you're a marketing director in 2017 and now you took a career gap and you're coming back, and then you go for the interview and you don't know what TikTok is, the interview is over.
That's it. Thank you for coming. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then, like different times. And there are people who refuse to change with the times.
Yeah.
Because I think what happened was, 5 or 10 years ago, maybe there are people who thought social media was not going to be so big. So it was this thing like, oh my God, why are you spending so much time?
Yeah.
They probably thought it's a phase that's going to come and go, but it's not going.
Yeah.
Actually, like there's so much happening. Like now, for example, I think the social media platform where you get the most ROI when you're doing your marketing is actually TikTok. There was a time you would never have found me on TikTok. I even thought it was just for kids. And people
and Gen Z.
And
teenagers,
and people, and people who are not mature. But then now you actually have to get in there. You actually have to get it. I actually remember someone telling me, like, John, you need to have a TikTok account. And we had a conversation and I was like, what are you smoking?
Yeah.
So the other day, that person texted me, and then they were like, are you smoking the same thing that you're asking me I was smoking? So like we have to like keep ourselves updated and in line with what is happening, because it's the only way that you're able to position yourself as a person of value during an interview, depending on what your area is, whether it's marketing or procurement or finance. Are you up to speed with the softwares that are currently being used in that area? Because then it could be you have this gap, but then you quickly go and do a 1-week course on a certain software, and that only is going to get you the job
Exactly.
in 2022. So also like try and work smart. You necessarily don't need to work so hard, go back and get a degree, or even if like you don't have any job that you've done, you can just do one thing and that would be enough to position you. So employment gaps are not entirely bad. There are people who we've worked with, and they were stay-at-home moms, and they were able to get back into the job market. So it's not, you're not disadvantaged completely just because you have an employment gap, but you must, first of all, you must redo your papers. You must redo your CV. You must redo your CV. You must redo your LinkedIn profile. You must go and check out which jobs are available. What skill set do I have?
What are they looking for? Because maybe the jobs you're applying for 5 years ago, like you met the cut, but then now you realize 5 years later the things they're looking for, because actually that's a good place even before you go and apply for new opportunities, is look at what is the market looking for, and then do I match up? If you realize, okay, out of the 3 or maybe out of the 5 jobs I'm looking at, 4 out of them require this particular thing, digital marketing. That means I need to figure out this digital marketing thing. It must be a critical thing in the industry. Or maybe people need somebody who knows cybersecurity, cloud intelligence, whatever it is. If it's IT, then you can't just be stuck. Like when IT sort of started ish, everyone was just content to be an IT manager. You just study IT and that's enough. But no, it's not enough to just study IT. Like you need to have all these extra things, because within IT there's so many sub specialties. So you can't just be comfortable with, I was an IT manager somewhere 5 years ago. What extra thing do you have that they're looking for right now? Because that's, determines your relevance.
Right. And you could have had a title 7 years ago that was secretary.
Yeah.
But what you're doing 5 years ago or 10 years ago is operations. So in 2022, your title needs to be operations, because then the experience that you have is actually operations. But you see, like if you go on LinkedIn and you put secretary,
you're completely different.
And the profile is never going to pop up. But if you put operations, it's going to pop up. So looking at the jobs that are currently available in 2022 is going to help you know how to word your CV, your LinkedIn profile, and all your branding tools.